Hey everyone, welcome to the That's Allowed podcast. I'm your hostess, Dr. Adrienne McKeon, and today we have one of my fabulous friends, Theresa Francomacaro. I had to say it like that.
I love it. That's how the Italians would say it.
That's
Years
right.
ago, I was in Italy and people would say, they come up to me and start speaking Italian. I don't know Italian, but okay,
Okay.
Francomacaro, whatever you want. It's all
So
good.
I, years ago, was actually in the Italian speaking part of Switzerland with
Ooh,
one of my cousins. And she, of course, speaks beautiful Spanish, French, Italian, blah, 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 because she lives in Europe and that's just what they do. Right. And I asked her before we were going to go to this club. And I was like, what do I say if a guy's like hitting on me and like giving me a hard time? And she's like, you look at him straight in the eye and you say, che bello ragazzo. And I was like, okay. So I practiced this over and over again. So then this guy comes out to me and he's like, getting all in my space. And so I was like, che bello ragazzo. And he's like, oh, he puts his arm around me. And my
what?
cousin is dying laughing. And I'm like, what did I just say to him? Like, what did you tell me to say? And she's like, you just called him a cute boy. You said, what a
Oh
cute guy.
my
And
God.
I was like, why would you do that to me? She's like, because it's really funny. So then I was like, so what do I say to him now? She's like, just tell him you don't speak Italian. And I was like, no parlo
Oh,
italiano. He's like, come no parlo italiano? Like, I just heard you speaking Italian. Like, don't
oh
lie to
my
me now.
gosh.
So it was so funny and bad. I was really mad at my cousin, but it all ended fine. I was like, I'm American. And he's like, me too. I am Americano. We are all
Yeah,
Americans here. Yes,
yeah,
yes.
right, right. He's American. Sure. I'll believe that. And I got a bridge to sell you in Manhattan, right?
Absolutely. Okay. Theresa, you still haven't introduced yourself to these wonderful people. Tell them
Oh
who
my
you
goodness.
are.
Yes, yes, yes. Well, my name is Theresa Francomacaro or Macaro, however you want to say it. It's all one word. I am the chief storyteller for Why Story Works, where we help people tell the right story at the right time to the right audience to get the right results. I am so excited to be here with you, Adrienne. I found you on LinkedIn, and that's really part of the story of this last year is just really working that LinkedIn space. And just really grateful to be here. So thanks for
Yeah,
having me.
absolutely. So, what story is the world not getting? You know all about story. So
Mhm.
tell us, what story is the world not getting?
Well, I think, the world needs stories and they forget, right? I think the world decides that storytelling or communication is a soft skill. And you and I both know that there's nothing soft about it. A really good storyteller is going to make it look really easy, and a great communicator inspires action. And people who understand how to inspire action know how to tap into emotion. And we all know that our brains really light up with story. And so, if we can figure out what the audience needs or what the person I'm speaking to needs to hear, and activate that piece of emotion in them, we can all, get along a little better. And so I think I feel like we should be singing that song. What the world needs now
Now,
is
it's
love.
stories, sweet, sweet stories.
Right, right. And my kids would say, "Huh, mom, don't sing, don't sing, please." But I think the world is missing this kindness and empathy, and that comes through story, and that's how we evolved as humans. And so that's what I think we're missing.
Absolutely. And by the way, my daughter would tell me not to sing too, but that's a whole
Well,
other. You
well,
can
you
you
got a
can
great
hear all
story.
about that on How to Be Amused. But so I want to hear about the greatest gift that 2020 gave you.
Oh, well,
She's like, oh,
there's so many, right? I think one of them is humility. And that might sound really like, well, what are you talking about? And it's like, we don't know everything. It can all be taken away in an instant. I remember on March 11th, 60% of my receivables vanished. And
mm,
then on March 28th, another 30% vanished. So I was left with 10% of my my sole practitioner, soul storytelling consulting business. And I thought, well, you know, you better get to work. You better pivot and figure out how to be resilient and how to network in a virtual space and how to, you know, support those folks around you and not get sucked in to this idea that it's so fast and how much you know and who you know and how much money you make and you know, let's get to it. I have sometimes a tendency, and I think I've shared this with you before, to really fetishize productivity
Yeah.
and connection and getting work done. And this past year, it's been so, I don't know, just up and down. It's like 3 days on, 2 days off, 2 days on, 5 days off. My sense of equilibrium on getting out there in the world has really changed. So yeah, that gift of just being humble and working around and listening to those around and holding space for maybe things that I didn't hold space for before.
What did your work life look like before the pandemic?
Oh gosh. Well, let's see. I try. My inner monologue would say, trying to line. You're doing it. Okay. So I work to run 2 businesses, not 1, but 2. So my husband has a general contracting business, so I manage his business for him, and I also run my own consulting business, Why Storyworks. And so a typical day for me might include, or week might include 3 days out in the field training, doing instructor-led training, either my own content or vendor partner contents. I'm also a certified Dale Carnegie instructor. And then I would spend another couple of days working on my husband's business and trying to network and get gigs and, you know, doing free speaking and, you know, whatever it could be. Just go, go, go. And also keeping my 2 adult daughters rolling. And it pandemic hit us and there were no rules. Everything just went away. I mean, it just went away fast.
Yeah.
It was an immediate shuttering. We also had to shutter my husband's business for a full 30 days. And, you know, as a general contractor, you don't know if people are going to hire you again. Who's going to want to update their bathroom in their kitchen when they don't have money to pay their mortgage? So just really learning to have to trust and the internal cop in the head who writes me a ticket every single day telling me, oh, you're not good enough, you're not smart enough, or who are you to be running these 2 businesses, would just be like, well, now what? So now what are you going to do? And
Yeah.
so I got to work creating videos and doing virtual webinars, obviously, and just changing the business model. And I'm not saying it's all sunshine and rainbows, because it's not.
Mhm.
It's not. It's hard. Yesterday was the very first day I was back doing an instructor-led seminar for one of my vendor partners, and it had been a year and a month to the day. And I got news for you. I felt a little rusty. I felt a little like, oh my, you know, but it's like riding a bike. It kind of comes back to you. And then I realized how much I really missed it. So yeah, it's a typical work week would have been out, 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 and now it's in. And sometimes having that internal focus is hard. It's
Yeah.
hard. Yeah.
So how did you create How Story Works in the first place? Tell me a little bit about the backstory there.
Yeah, well, Why Story Works came about because I had spent about a dozen years working in Fortune 500 companies doing adult learning and training and sales training and education and brand ambassadorship and managing teams and managing, you know, inside sales teams, customer service teams, uh, training and development initiatives. And one of the Fortune 500 companies I was working with, after shifting jobs with them about 6 times in a 4.5 year span, they outsourced our entire department. And
Wow.
yeah, and today that company is no longer in existence, which, you know, that said a lot about them. But so I took my severance package and my health benefits and I said, well, now, if not now, then when?
Yeah.
And so I took all of that energy that I was putting into making my Fortune 500 companies a lot of money and put it into uplifting my husband's business. So within about a year, his business was pulling in what I was making within those corporate arenas. And then it took me, a lot of time, and I'm still working on it to kind of get my business up and running. And so it's a process. But that really just got me thinking, if I don't do this now, then when am I going to do it? We're not getting any younger. Um, and something really significant happened. It'll be 5 years ago, May 3rd. Um, my sister, I'm one of 7 kids, and I was the youngest for many, many, many years. And then my younger sister came along when I was 9. But there are 3 of us, my sister Kate, my sister Maria, and myself, that are all within 3 years apart of one another. And she passed away of stage 4 colon cancer. And she was the exact same age that I was when I was thinking about starting Why Story Works. And I remember her saying to me, what a wasted life I led, failing at things just to piss off mom and dad. And I'm like, whoa. And I thought, and I love my sister dearly. I mean, she was a great person. We used to call her Kate the Great. She had so much moxie and so much just spirit. And she passed away at a very tender age. And I thought, I don't want to live with regrets. I don't want to be on my deathbed thinking, oh, if only I should have, would have, could have, why didn't I? And like I said, my sister Kate, she was the type of person. She would, as we were kids, my mom used to dress us all alike, and we used to all wear these little dresses. My mom would make our clothes, and we'd wear these little pinafore dresses with saddle shoes and, Mary Jane's. And she'd wear her shoes with no socks, and she'd put these Chiquita banana stickers on the soles of her shoes. And sometimes she'd put them right in her forehead, like she had this third eye, and she'd climb trees, and, she was cool in my eyes. And, and she was gone in an instant. And I
Yeah.
just, I'm like, it's not going to be me. And she was the second sibling of mine to pass too soon. And so again, I'm like, what are you waiting for?
Yeah.
Everybody's got a story. It just needs coaxing to the surface. And I got my own story. And is my story going to be that I didn't live the life I wanted to? So rip the band-aid off, sister, go for it, just do it, right, as they say. And it's a journey. And I fail, and I'm not exactly where I thought I would be at this point. um and I'm further along, so it's like this paradox. So that's
Yeah.
the story. Yeah.
I feel like it is so hard for women to invest in themselves. Do you feel that?
Yes and no. I always thought possibly it was a female thing.
Mm.
And I don't know if it is so gendered. I do know that I didn't feel confident truly stepping out on my own until I had that financial support,
Yeah.
either with the severance package or, making my husband's business boost. And I got news for you. I spent a long time searching for the next gig, right? The next Fortune 500 company. And, some days I still look at things and I think, oh, maybe I'll put my hat in the ring for that. And then when I don't get it, I'm like, oh, that's the universe telling me it's not where you need to be. Uh, which is really hard to hear sometimes. And so I think sometimes it's more of an internal mind shift, and that can
Yeah.
happen whether you're a male or a female. And sometimes it's about that financial security, or what we believe to be a financial security. And sometimes the way of the world is that the men have more financial security sometimes. So in a way, yes. And I don't know. I don't know.
Yes, no, and I don't know. Yeah, what I mean by that is just I've often noticed that women, I think because of that, because, historically women just haven't controlled the money, and they just haven't had as many kind of financial resources, that as soon as you get a little bit of money, there's this sense of, oh, I need to invest this in somebody who can make more money with it, like my husband
Mm,
or like my children.
mhm.
Rather than, oh, I should invest this in myself. I should invest
Well,
this in my own business. I
well,
I, I certainly to
Yeah,
be fair
yeah,
to myself.
I think you've got it. And like I said, I was listening to some of your podcasts, where people were talking about their story and what stops them. And I do that a lot with my one-on-one coaching. Like what stops you
Yeah.
from doing this? And you and I have had these conversations before about manifesting. And it seems to me that the fear factor can come at any time. So I
Oh,
don't know if
yeah.
it's about investing in myself as opposed to not investing in that story of you're not going to make it or it's not going to work.
Mm.
So that's the key, and really feeling like it's going to be okay. And that's really hard because I'm going, what am I crazy? We're going to run not one but two businesses in the middle of a pandemic. I mean, that's insane. That's insanity. There's no guaranteed income, there's no guaranteed health benefits, there's no sick time, there's no 401k, there's no time off. It's if you don't make money right now, it's all on you, and we're fine. um
I have to tell you though, I mean, and I've had that same conversation, with myself, but looking back, I feel like there was never any guarantee
Mm,
anywhere.
exactly,
And that's
exactly,
what you're seeing with the pandemic is that so many people who thought they had this guarantee, who thought that
right,
they had this
right,
ironclad, a career choice that was always going to support them and always going to be there,
yep,
and they put all their eggs in that one basket,
yep,
and now all their eggs are broken.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
and so I think it's really important, especially as I get older. I'm seeing more and more the need to diversify, the need to
mhm,
put my eggs into different baskets, the need to share my gifts in different areas and in different
mhm,
ways, so that if things shift and something happens, I can be a little more modular, a little more,
right, right.
yeah, flexible.
Yeah, well, it's funny because I was reading an article just the other day, because I'm always reading, I'm sure all of us are, about and I can attest to this. My dad, speaking of stories, he was in the Navy for some years, but then he worked for a company for 40 years. And then he retired. I mean, he was a senior vice president, and he was a civil engineer, and he's got his pension. We don't do that now. People shift jobs every two
Yeah.
years. The future of work is not learning one skill, because that skill is going to be outdated. It's about resiliency and being able to communicate and sell your ideas and being a continuous lifelong learner. And I think people are swinging back around to that, right? For years it was STEM, 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 and now it's like, oh, we need to learn how to talk to one another. Like, yeah, hello. That doesn't go away.
Yeah. I wanna go back though to something you said earlier about,
Mhm,
well, I didn't wanna invest in a story of, I'm not gonna make it. Of course. Like,
mhm,
I think that's a really important mindset to be aware of. What story are you telling yourself about where you're going?
mhm,
And if you keep telling yourself like, "Well, I'm gonna try, but it's probably not gonna work," or, "Yeah, I'll
mhm.
probably only make this much at this," or, it's like, of course you're not gonna invest in that story. You're not gonna invest your
Right,
energy in
right.
it. You're not gonna invest your money into it. Like, you're not gonna invest yourself into that story. You need to have a story that you can really get behind and that you want to invest in.
Well, yes, and I think some of it is your personality, right?
Yeah.
About like I said, when I started Why Story Works about 4 years ago, when I got that news from the company, and I just decided, all right, I'll go for it. You know what I had? I had a business card, and I had a free gig that I was teaching, a 20-minute gig that I got invited to teach, and that was it. And I didn't have a website, and but I had material, I had a passion. And so I did this conference, Learnapalooza, and lo and behold, out of 50 presenters, my piece went to the top. Like they liked it more than the hour-long presentations. And then the person who was running the conference is like, where have you been? I'm like, well, I've been off selling widgets for XYZ PDQ Fortune 500 company. She's like, well, you need to get over here, my friend. And I'm like, okay. And it's just kind of been going slowly ever since, on some level slowly, but rapidly in another way, because it's been a mind shift. And my goal initially was just try to make more money this year than you made last year. Just try to, with Why Story Works, just try to make as much money with your Why Story Works as you make with some of your vendor partners that you teach their content. Let's see if you can do that. So I think those
Yeah.
little mini goals
Yeah.
and if you stay stasis for a little while, if I'm hovering, like this year with the pandemic, we've been hovering. We didn't double our income this year. We hovered around the same as what we did last year. And I'll be incredibly transparent. Maybe I shouldn't be, but could I support myself 100% on just my Why Story Works income? Probably not. And why is that? Well, because I also support my husband's business and I
Yeah.
try to run, our family with I have a daughter that's going to graduate high school this year, and having her do online learning and have an entire senior year online, and ensuring that she's going to get launched to college. And I have another daughter who's at UW. She's a junior and she's a dance major. And my other daughter does theater tech. And I have a background in performance, big surprise there, storyteller. But it's really fun to see them kind of come into their own. But I realized, I'm like, what's important to me now? I mean, that was the big thing with investing in the story. I'm going to invest in what really, really matters to me. And my family matters to me, my kids, my husband, my friends. I mean, there's some friends that I'm not friends with anymore. I just didn't have the bandwidth to keep up that facade. And I think that again, the pandemic, this story of what's important, what do you value, where am I going to go, where am I going to put my energies, and leaping a little bit, that faith. Because if I hadn't lost all that income in March, I don't know that I would have leapt with creating videos and being more present on LinkedIn and having conversations like this with you. I never would have met you. I wouldn't have met you. There are people that I've met through the virtual space that I never ever would have met because I wouldn't have had time. I would have been running off to some networking event downtown Seattle or what have you, and not really just sitting in that moment of being, well, who do I want to support? Who who really resonates? What company, what area really is where I want to spend my time? Um, so anyway, my mother always used to say, do what you love and the money will follow. Or, everyone says if you do what you love, you'll never work a day in your life. Well, I work really, really, really hard and I love what I do. And the money is coming, but it's a slow drip. And I feel as if I put too much pressure on myself that I do this just for the
Mhm.
money, then I wouldn't do moments like this, right?
That's right.
I wouldn't go and do a free seminar at Lean Startup Seattle because I really believe in the founder story and getting your origin story straight. I wouldn't do those things because I think, well, that doesn't pay, so I'm not going there.
I think
Right.
it's such a gift just to be aligned to your gifts and giving your gifts, you know?
Well, yes. And what choice do you have, right? I mean,
You definitely have a choice. I mean, I know I spent a lot of my life not focusing on that and feeling
yeah.
like my gifts were not very valuable because
Well,
people weren't, throwing money at them.
Well, come on. We're both theater practitioners, right? I have a
Right.
master's degree in performance. You have a doctorate degree in it. I mean, my goodness, we don't value in this country or maybe in the world the artist muse, the internal stories that connect us to one another. And so that's a shame.
Yeah.
You asked earlier, what stories are we missing as a world? And the pendulum is shifting. People are, the earth is coming alive and saying, I don't think so.
Yeah.
The iceberg is melting, and things are seeping out that maybe were frozen. And bravo. And so we don't really know. We're kind of all, I was saying to somebody, my sister said this to me, one of my sisters, she's like, we're all in the same boat, but some people's boats are better than others. And
I always say, we're not actually in the same boat. We're in the same flood,
yes, yes.
but
Well,
not all boats are created equal.
especially with this pandemic. I mean, I think we
Yeah.
really got a big dose of reality. And the reality is some of us are, the inequities that are there. And again, I don't want to make this a soapbox and all of that, but I have paid more attention to my own sense of privilege. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm very, very, very fortunate in that it's not lost on me. And we don't have a lot. I mean, we live in a tiny little house. I have a, here in the Pacific Northwest, it's not like we have, huge, extraordinary income, and we're doing okay. We're fine. The universe provides.
Yeah.
So yeah, yeah. And I love really being aligned with what makes you happy. And yesterday was like one of the days that I call a pocket moment day. I want to keep that day in my pocket. And they're not always like that. They're
Tell us
not
about yesterday. What happened?
well, let's see. Well, the night before I couldn't sleep, which was horrible. I only slept 2 hours, but I finally, I got myself to sleep because I was doing an instructor-led workshop
Yeah.
after about a year of being off, and I was teaching modules I'd never taught before. So I was up at 5:30. After 2 hours of sleep, I got to the office at 7. I trained until 11:30, and then I had a conference call in my car on the way home, and then I had a quick lunch, and then I was interviewed for a podcast, and then I had our creativity cohort, you and I, and then I did my walk with my dog, and I ate a really nutritious dinner. So that was an awesome day. Now, if every single day could look like that, that would be great. And I did get paid, right? I had some financial remuneration there. Not everything was a freebie. So yeah, it was a really good day. So I'll remember that one. And I was really tired today when I woke up. I was exhausted,
Well, I
but
believe, and I think you do too, in, the law of attraction. So I think the more focus and gratitude you can put on days like that, the more
mhm,
days like that you get. If you
yeah,
really can just revel in that and go, yes, more like this, please. I think more
mhm.
do come, I believe.
Yes, yes, for sure. And if because I can get really hard on myself, and I know a lot of us can. We can just
Yeah.
really, I say, get down the rabbit hole and just get stuck there. And that's where, I've got to have those resources in place. Sometimes I'll just drop things on my calendar just to get me going with something really strategic, or a tactic that I know will help me move along. Because as an extrovert in the pandemic, it's been really hard. I love people. I love hanging around people. I love connecting with people. I love presenting with people. It's very different. It's just been very different this year.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, as much as I'm really enjoying these, Zoom calls and getting to know people virtually, like I cannot wait until you and I can
Yeah,
like have a picnic,
yeah,
go
yeah.
for a walk,
Right,
I
right.
mean, oh boy.
Well, and that's the interesting thing, right? It's as I really kind of getting going with this idea of story, really going all in 100%, and giving people just as many resources as possible and as much material as possible, and saying there's enough for everybody, and I'll share it with you, and if you find resonance in it, great. If that helps you, one of the things I say, there are 5 neurological responses inherent in any good story, and then people are like, what is that? I'm like, well, let me tell you. And I years ago, when I was living in the East Coast, and I was running training, but also writing my first play, and different things. I remember working with a production company and feeling like they were hoarding everything, and they didn't even want to give posters. I'm like, I wrote the play, which ran for 5 years, and they didn't want to give posters. I'm like, this is good for everybody, right? I mean,
Yeah,
there is enough for everybody. We don't need to hoard our brilliance. We can share it. But again, that comes from that scarcity mindset. Like,
yeah,
there's not going to be enough, and I'm not going to be enough, and it's all going to fall away. So I better make sure I get every ounce and drip and drop from what I can give, and make a remuneration out of it. And maybe that's what I mean by the shift with the pandemic. It
yeah,
really calls a mind shift. Yeah.
absolutely. So what
Yeah.
are the five neurological responses to
Oh,
storytelling?
well, it's interesting that you asked me that. You could check them all out. I got them all sitting on my website,
Hey,
but
I'm a theater
also
person. I know a cue when I hear one.
you do. She picks that was a softball for you. So I use the mnemonic FLEA, FLLEA. So if you want your audience not to flee, you need to trigger their emotional responses inside of their amygdala so that they pay attention and they listen. So, for example, if you know the F stands for fear. So the FLEA is fear, love, longing, empathy, and action. So those are the 5 key drivers inside of a really good story. So if you've got, or you know your audience is feeling fearful, they are having a hard time focusing. So all this stuff with the pandemic where they're like productivity hacks and how to manage your remote team, it's just like maybe your people need you to just help them focus. Maybe you need to slow down. Maybe you need to just give them some space, right? So that they can release some cortisol, because cortisol courses through our veins when we're in that fear response, and fear isn't always bad. It helps us focus. So if you know your audience is in fear mode, release stories that activate cortisol. The L, love. Oh, so many people, especially now in the pandemic, we've been feeling lonely. We've lost that love. I've lost that love and feeling, right? So, if you know that's where your audience is, tell them some stories that will release dopamine. And dopamine is that neurochemical in the brain that gets triggered when we're like, oh, she likes me. She really likes me. I get all those likes on your podcast, right? Or the reshares. And the thing about dopamine is it only stays in the system for about 90 seconds. So that's why we get addicted to our phones. And so we got to keep priming that pump. The next L is longing. So if you know your audience is feeling really depleted, like a lot of healthcare workers, a lot of people on the front lines, they need to feel that sense of peace and serenity. So maybe tell a story that's going to activate serotonin. It's kind of how I feel when I eat a big bowl of pasta.
Yep.
um, and so you got fear, love, longing, and then you have empathy. So empathy is a lot of times released with oxytocin, the mirroring chemical. It's that neurochemical that gets released in the brain when women nurse their babies. It's like, oh, you see me, you really see me, you get me. And who here couldn't benefit from having somebody really understand their point of view?
Yeah.
And then the last one for the A is adrenaline. So if you know somebody's stuck, you want to release adrenaline. So those action stories, those defining moment call to action stories that get people out of their comfort zone and moving. That's why you might see a lot of CEOs at the end of a sales meeting do these go forth and conquer, stories. So that's what I try to tell people. If you want your audience not to flee, tell them what they need to hear. So activate inside of your audience those neurochemical responses that are going to get the amygdala to pay attention and to wake up. So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Well, I think it's about time to transition into
Yeah.
our little exercise here. You ready
Okay.
to rock and roll?
Yes.
Okay. So, you know how this goes. Close our eyes.
Mhm.
Take a nice deep breath, and as you breathe in, I want you to see colored light come into your body.
Mm.
Tell me what color it was.
Oh, it's my favorite color, seafoam blue. I'm actually wearing it
Mm,
today.
lovely. Mine too, my favorite, as you see. So,
Mm.
another deep breath in. Gorgeous. And now I'm going to wave my magic wand, and everything that you deeply desire has now come to pass. Here in this moment, it is real, it is true. And you can keep your eyes closed if that helps you visualize. I know it does me. I want you to look around your ideal life and just tell me what you see.
Oh, I see abundance.
Hmm.
I see love. I see connection. I see serenity. I see wonder. um, Wonder, play, fun. Yeah,
So
yeah.
I want you to go to a place in your mind where it's like your happy place. It's a
Mm,
beautiful setting that just makes you feel like, yes, I'm home, I am calm. This is exactly where I need to be. And just tell
mm.
me what it looks like there.
Ah, yes, I go here a lot, especially when I have a hard time sleeping. It's a field that has long wheatgrass, and there's a clearing where there's a big willow tree, and there is a Pendleton type, red and blue, yellow and green blanket with a picnic basket and some delicious fruit and cheese and maybe a bottle of wine and sparkling water. And there's a swing and a light breeze, and it's usually my favorite time of day, which is just before twilight, around 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon,
Mm.
and it's quiet. Yeah,
What do you hear?
birds,
Mm.
the wind, um,
Take a breath
rustling.
in, and I want you to see what you can smell.
The grass, the
Mm.
wheat, the the air.
Can you
Um,
feel the grass under your feet?
I feel the softness of the blanket. I'm lying on the
Mm,
blanket.
yes.
Yes. I love soft things, and it's a soft place to land, and it's open, it's forgiving, it's uncomplicated.
And as you're lying there, something unexpectedly delightful happens. What is it?
My husband shows up. I'm like, "Oh, look at you. So nice of you to join us." Um, yeah, and we kiss, and yeah,
Mm.
it's and we share some food, and we toast, and yeah.
He tells you some wonderful news that you just weren't expecting to hear.
Oh god, he tells me how much he loves me and how much he supports my business and how proud he is. I'm gonna cry. Yeah, it's and how grateful he is that we're in it together. We've been together 25 years. I met him on a sailboat when I came out to Seattle on vacation, and I never left. I quit my job over the phone, and we're still together 25 years later with two kids, ages 18 and 21. But and this hasn't been easy. It has not been easy. This past year, especially, has been tough. It's hard to work with your spouse and live with them and run the businesses and stay in the present moment and not be consumed by fear. Um, Look at you getting me all vulnerable. Does this happen all the time? She's
Yeah,
like, yes, yes, it
pretty
does.
much. Pretty much
All the
all the
time.
time.
That's the power of story, my friend.
It is. It is the power of story, and it's the
Yeah.
power of recognizing your true desires
Well, that
and of really
vulnerability
looking them
piece,
in the face and saying, "That's what I want.
the
That's what."
human connection, that human connection, I could have said, "Oh yeah, I wake up and I'm there by myself and I've got, lots of clients." No, it's who's in the foxhole with you.
Yes.
Who is there with you? Who is saying, "I got you," that's what we need, and that's the power of story because that's how we connect, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And what I heard in there too was support, that he's
Yeah.
supporting what you're doing and is
Well,
really.
sometimes not really, but
That's what I'm
but yes,
saying. I think that's a
yeah.
desire that I heard there,
Yes, yes,
is
yes.
for him to support your business as much as you support his.
Correct, correct, correct. Yes, and to see the value there.
Yeah.
And that's why, there are people that you put in your life, people like yourself, people like, my business partner, Erna, people like, Aaron, who's in the creativity cohort with us. I had a meeting this morning with somebody who is a storyteller in Montana. I mean, you can't expect one person to be everything for you. You've got to create alliances for yourself and bridges for yourself because people have their own stuff. I tell
Yeah.
people all the time, people don't really care about you. They really care about themselves. Everybody's listening to the same radio station. WWIFIM, what's in it for me, right? And that's normal. That's normal. That's how we've survived as a species. Our point of view is is what we see the world through.
That's
And
right.
when we can let that point of view be open to others, through hearing their stories or listening or having this type of a podcast where you say, that's allowed. You can do that. That's okay. We give ourselves permission. That's where the magic happens. So, yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Well, thank you so much for sharing this magic with us
Thank
and
you.
for letting all the listeners filter your story through their eyes. And
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much, Audrienne. I
mhm,
am so grateful to have met you this past year.
yeah, and I am so grateful that I'm part of the creativity cohort and
Yes.
that
Yes.
we are creating. By the way, anyone who's listening, I think this is going to go up in July, actually. So I'm not sure how this will work out, but we are currently working on plotting an idea to
Hmm.
have a retreat,
Hmm.
a creativity retreat. I know this is
Yep.
something that I've been wanting to do for a long time, and so we're going to make it happen. We're going to make
We
it
are.
happen.
We are. The seeds have been planted, and now we've put it out there in the world. We're going to have to live up to it, right?
Absolutely.
And that's the beautiful thing about stories and expertise. I mean, everyone's got their own point of view. There's enough for everybody, and that magic that happens when we live in those moments that bring us intense joy. You never know. One of
Yeah.
my favorite authors, Dr. Seuss. Oh, the places we'll go, right? We'll go so many places. So yes, the
And
creativity cohort.
sometimes investing in yourself
Yep.
doesn't need to have money. Sometimes it's just about taking that time and that energy and going to a retreat where you
Hmm.
spend some time and focus on creating
Yeah.
what is inside of you, bringing it outside of you for other
Mhm.
people to enjoy.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
All
Yeah.
right, my dear, thank you so much for being here. Where can the lovely folks at home find you?
Oh, for sure. You can find me on LinkedIn. I spend a lot of time there. Theresa Francomacaro. And the easier thing to do is www.whystoryworks.com. So WHYSTORYWORKS, or Teresa at whystoryworks.com. I've got a website, I got a YouTube channel, LinkedIn, all of it. Come share your story. I'd love to hear. We need our stories now more than ever, especially as we begin to emerge from our cocoons and our caves. We've got to remind ourselves that human connection is so valuable, and we're social creatures. We live and breathe stories every day, and that's what I've committed my life to doing, and I love it. Love hearing stories, love sharing stories, and find me. Let's chat. Love to hear your story.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.